I think 50% was the most I ever paid on a second mortgage. So think about that. That's if you have $100,000 second, that's $50,000 that you created in thin air, essentially, by just asking.
Welcome to the Bigger Pockets Best Deal Ever show. I'm your lovable host, Ken Corsini, who with my wife, Anita, have flipped over 800 houses in Atlanta since 2005 and even have a show on HGTV. But this show isn't about us. It's about all the amazing real estate investors out there that are crushing it. It's about their stories, their best deals, how they sourced them, how they funded them, and what we can learn from their experiences. This is the Best Deal Ever show. Welcome to the Best Deal Ever show. I am here with one of my good buddies, Corey Boatwright. Corey, how you doing, man?
What's up, Ken?
How goes it?
Oh, man. Awesome. Having a killer Friday here in Oklahoma.
Let's talk about your best deal. I'm curious. Was it a multifamily? Was it a wholesale? Was it a flip?
No.
What's your best deal look like?
No, man. Believe it or not. So the best deal I've ever done is crazy. So I got involved with real estate. I did my first deal when I was 21. I'm 43 now. But I wasn't really a real estate investor. I was just kind of learning. But my best deal ever is actually a deal that had zero equity.
Really?
Zero equity.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I want to hear this.
And back in the early 2000s, I want to say it's around 2008 or 9.
Okay.
There was a house that came up, and it was a deal that had no equity. In fact, it had 3 different mortgages on it. And of course, this time, if you remember, Kent, was a big time for short sales. Banks, and the recession was going on. Banks were just hemorrhaging cash, or what we think they were hemorrhaging cash.
Right,
They actually already made all their money, but they were hemorrhaging cash.
Yeah.
And, and so they were willing to take a discount on debt. Well, in the priority of liens and judgments and mortgages, so the first mortgage takes priority, unless some states mechanics liens will take priority or homeowner association fees. But at the end of the day, you have the first mortgage will take priority, and then anything underneath that just gets the scraps, gets whatever's left.
Sure.
And they just got to take it, or they, are just going to go to foreclosure and then sold at the sheriff's sale, and they won't get anything.
That's right. Yep.
So even if someone says, I'm owed $100,000, but you're in a second position, it wasn't uncommon for that person to take $5,000 or $10,000 for their position.
Yep.
Right. And what could they do about it? Not a lot, unless they chose to foreclose.
Yep.
Right. Unless they chose another strategy. So in this particular case, in Oklahoma City, there was a very big house in a historical area.
Okay.
Now, the interesting thing about historical areas is that you have some people that absolutely love historical areas. I mean, they'll do anything to get that house. They've looked at it for years. They loved it, right? They drove by it. And no matter if it's you have a brand new house you built, you think it's better. They love that historical piece of it, right? They love it's built in the 1910s or whatever. Like they love that aspect of it. And a lot of these houses were much bigger too, so they're grandiose. They have take up a big part of the street. So this was one of those houses, man. It was a huge, huge house. And it just so happened that this thing came across our desk. I want to say it was from a referral, but I really don't remember the marketing where it came from. We had letters going out back then, but I think it was from a referral. And so when we first met with this person, we obviously knew this probably didn't have any equity in it. But what was interesting about it is the property actually was run down. And I mean, it was really run down. Like I'm talking about, you see this kind of on the outside, and you ever seen this house, you're like, wow. Well, like you see the bones on it. You're like, you see the potential of what the house could be.
Yeah.
But then when you actually step in the house, you see how dilapidated, how much that, I mean, imagine 80-year-old home is over 80 years, right? Over 80-year-old home. What can happen if someone hasn't put any money into it? I'm talking about old faucets and I mean, a lot of the old original stuff, which can turn people off or turn people on, like, right? And this has to do with finding the right buyer. So I knew when I found this house that most people were going to think this is probably a crap hole, but I knew the right kind of buyers that love this area.
Okay.
This was in an area it's called Heritage Hills. And if you're in Oklahoma City, you already know, that is a nice area, right? That's an area where historical homes are, and it's highly desirable now, but even then it was, kind of desirable. So lo and behold, I ended up getting the owner to agree to do a letter of authorization, and they are, of course, going to lose this property. It was very close to the sheriff's sale. I want to say it was less than 60 days away for sheriff's sale, so we had to work pretty quickly.
Was there a mortgage on it, or I guess it was going to short?
There was 3 different mortgages on it.
Okay.
So there was the first mortgage took up, I want to say, about 80% of the deal. So they must have done an 90-10 kind of deal. But then they also had a second mortgage that went way over what they had the value of the property. And then they had a third mortgage, which I don't even know why someone put a third mortgage on. Right. But I want to say it was from a private lender. And I think it's just because they saw how big the house was and they probably needed some money. And they're like, I'll just give you a mortgage on my house. Yeah. And some unsophisticated, schmuck just said, okay, I'll do it or whatever. So lo and behold, I had to negotiate 3 different mortgages. And I remember that the first mortgage ended up taking just under when we got so what happens on a short sale is you have a BPO, a broker price opinion that happens. And that's from an agent that comes out to the property, and they're hired by the mortgage company that will look at the property and give them an opinion of the value. Well, this property had it's already an old property. So the roof was just like a crinkled up roof. It had all kinds of messed up places on the roof that had holes on the side of the roof. And it was just really looked bad, right? It's kind of like as a wholesaler, when you walk into a house and you see cockroaches and you see crazy stuff, like to one person, they get scared. The other person, it's like they see money.
I smell money, man. That's
I smell money. Those little dollars, those are little dollar signs running around. They are cockroaches. So, so this is what happened. So I knew when the broker was going to come there, and the property was big. So they had to walk in the property, and there was areas where their downstairs in the basement was like all smelled moldy and horrible. In fact, I don't know. I think the rule of thumb back then was they didn't open their basement. So they just kept it all musky and stuff down in there. And I remember it had like standing water that was in the basement too, that they just left for years, years of just standing water.
Were they living in the house? Somebody was living in the house?
Yes, and they were living in the house.
That's crazy.
And it was sad too. They had a lot of kids in the house too, I remember too. And but and then there was an upstairs and then another upstairs. So it was like a 3-story house. And it was this huge, just beautiful, big, potential big, beautiful house, but it had a lot of challenges in it. And so I remember I just had the right broker price opinion, had the right agent, and I was walking them through. And as we got down to the basement and I opened up the door, I remember that he was just like, oh, like the feeling that he got that this house just needed so much work. Was instantly ratified at that point. Yeah. Right. And so I knew that I thought we're going to get a pretty big discount. So back then, depending on what kind of loan that you had on the property, Ken, you knew that there were some formulas that the lender would go by. Yep. So if the property was worth, let's say, $500,000, and the broker price opinion came in at, let's say, 80% of that number, then right, that what the value is going to be is around $400,000. Then you knew that a lender, without having to go and request another kind of level of requirement to get approval, they would take 10% off. But if you wanted to go under that, you'd have to get another level of approval. Well, I did something that was really, really interesting. So I found out who that the lender used to get an appraisal on the property. And then I hired that person myself.
Sneaky.
And so what I did is I found out essentially, Ken, the price. I found out because they didn't want to go back out to the house when they were just there a week before.
Yeah.
They already had the appraisal.
Yep.
Basically, they just gave me what they gave the lender.
And this is and technically it wasn't an appraiser, right? It was an agent doing
an agent.
Yeah, doing a broker.
Price. Yeah,
so you hired them and basically got the inside scoop.
I got the inside scoop, man. And I realized that they took a big chunk of money off this property. Nice. And I knew at that point, whenever they gave me what the broker price opinion was. So I believe the property was around, I thought the property would appraise for around $550,000. And so I know that doesn't sound like a nice property for some, but that was actually a really nice property.
Sure.
In this area.
Sure. And
I knew that the broker price opinion came in, I want to say it was roughly around like $350,000.
So the loan on it was, or you think that first position loan was in the 550, somewhere in there?
I remember that the first loan was at least in the like in the 400s.
Okay.
It's been a while since but it's in the 400s. And then they had that second loan that was at least 100. And then that third one was, I think it was between like 20 and 30, something like that.
Yep.
And so once I knew that the broker price opinion came at 350, I already knew right off the bat that they would take another 10% off that.
Yep.
Right. So, lo and behold, man, I actually got a lot more than that off the property. What I did was we put in an offer on the property for $220,000. We put in an offer for $220,000, and we ended up having the short sale approved at $250,000.
Okay.
$250,000.
And technically, it's approved by the first position loan, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
First position loan.
Yep.
We ended up having the second mortgage because we got them on the phone. Back then, you could actually. So there's a lot of things I did back then, but you could actually do a 3-way call with the second mortgage and the first mortgage on. So it's like, I want to pay you more money, second mortgage, but the first is not letting me, because the first wants to get all of it, right?
Sure, yeah.
So the first wouldn't allow more than 10% to be paid on that 100K. So we ended up getting $10,000 for the second.
Wow.
And then we ended up paying $1,000 for the third. So we were all in at like $261,000.
Wow.
I happen to know a guy that did a lot of historic repairs, and he had a buyer that he absolutely said that's been looking at this house for years and they wanted it. And he even told me that, dude, they will pay premium price. They will pay like whatever that thing, what you think appraised for. So we ended up selling the property for $150,000 profit.
Oh my God.
We ended up selling the property for, it was right around, let's see here. I think it was like I want to say it was $430,000. It was like $430,000. And when it was all said and done, after paying all the fees, and we had to pay one side on the agent, they didn't have an agent, they were paying cash.
Yep.
And we had an agent that lists the property. Back then you actually could list it when you got the approval. Now that's changed,
Sure.
But we got an approval so we could list it. And we ended up selling the property for $430,000, and we made over $150,000 profit on a property that had no equity, had 3 mortgages, right? In an historic area. Now, here's the little twist.
Yeah.
People that bought the house went to the neighborhood in the city, and they actually got 25% historical credits.
Oh, wow.
that they ended up getting. So when they were fixing up the house, they had to fix it up to a standard of that neighborhood, and they got back a 25% credit. So for every dollar, right, that they're putting back, they got a 25-cent back. So it worked out really great for them too.
And was that like the form of a tax credit?
Yeah. Tax credit. Yep.
That's amazing. That's crazy.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy, man?
That's insane.
That was it. That was the best deal I've ever did. Over $150,000. Lo and behold, on a short sale.
Yeah.
And
now, did you buy it? Because back in the day, you couldn't really wholesale short sales because you had to hold them for 30 days, right?
Yeah. So back then, you didn't have that. You didn't have that red letter. So I didn't have to hold it for the 60 days things that most of them have now.
Yeah.
It was I want to say the lender. It wasn't like a Wells Fargo or another big lender. It was like wasn't Countrywide. It was like another bank, private bank. I think it was called 53rd Bank. I think that's what it was, 53rd Bank, and which I think they're out of business now, or they I believe it was 53rd Bank.
Okay.
And we didn't have any kind of provisions where we had to hold it.
Yep.
And plus the buyers were paying cash on the other side too, so they didn't have to have a loan.
So did you double close it then? Just same day?
We did double close. And inside in Oklahoma, we're actually known as a dry state, not a wet state. So for closing, so we can use the cash that someone comes in this case, the $430,000 that they brought, to actually purchase on our A to B side. Yep.
So no need for transactional funding.
No need for transactional funding.
Borrow from the B to C to pay the A to B.
You got it, man.
That's a beautiful thing.
It was beautiful. It was a pretty incredible deal, man. And it really did change. It changed a lot of things for me. Because you got to imagine, I mean, up to that point, you might have made $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 on deals. And so this was a home run. And it had no equity when we started.
That's a big takeaway right there. Is you don't see it short sales as much anymore, but I have a feeling we're going to start seeing more of them. But just because it doesn't look like there's equity does not mean that there's not an opportunity to have a deal.
Always ask other questions.
That's right.
Always ask other questions. Like in that case, on the short sale, I knew because it had 3 mortgages on it that I actually could get a bigger discount.
Yeah,
I know it sounds strange, but
no, you're right.
The more people that have owed against the property, you don't know how much of that equity that they're taking up. And if they're in a second position, I mean, imagine if they were in a second position, but maybe they only did a 70-30 instead of a 90-10. Like that would have been, I mean, you just never know how much that you could create equity out of thin air by discounting that second mortgage because they're in a vulnerable position.
That's right.
They're either going to they're not going to foreclose. So they're just going to take what you can give them. Now, sometimes, and this was a lot, I mean, I did a lot of short sales.
Yeah.
So sometimes it was a lot harder to that second to take 10 cents on the dollar, right? Sometimes they only take 50 cents on the dollar because they knew that, hey, whether this is all we're going to accept. So you have to get them to agree, or, you're not going to have a deal and then you're going to foreclose and they're going to roll the dice and see what they get. But most of the time, if you can work with them, I think 50% was the most I ever paid on a second mortgage. So think about that. That's if you have $100,000 second, that's $50,000 that you created in thin air, essentially, by just asking. Yeah. By just asking, by asking how many mortgages they have on the property.
Well, and that's a good cautionary tale for any of you private lenders that are being asked to go into second lien position, right? You are not in a good position. If things go south, you are very vulnerable. And there's potential if they get foreclosed on, you lose it all. So of course you're going to come to the table and play ball and figure something out. Half of, something's better than all or nothing.
It's so true.
So that's amazing. What a killer deal. Okay. So what advice would you give somebody? Somebody just listened to this deal and they're like, that's amazing. He created equity out of thin air. What advice would you give to somebody who's out there looking for deals? Maybe they run across a short sale.
Sure. So, short sales, I haven't really been focused on them for many years for a lot of different reasons. I had a loss mitigation company. I created a course on them back then. I mean, I really started to go deep into short sales. And because that was actually a big motivator whenever I could realize I could make that much money on a property with no equity. Wow, how many more properties were out there that people owed, way more on that they should have never borrowed on. I mean, there were some deals in California where it's worth, supposedly worth $1 million, and the lender ended up taking $200,000. So imagine that, an $800,000 quote loss. So anyway, so with short sales, I do believe that you're going to see more of them as well. I think you're going to see a lot of them with FHA buyers because they didn't have any money to put down. So they just got into the house any way they can. And I think that, whenever you don't have any money to put into a property that you're buying, that could be a strategic way to do it. But majority is because you don't have the money. You probably shouldn't be buying that house. Right? If you don't have money to put down on a house, you probably shouldn't be buying it for the majority of the case. Sometimes maybe it's just a strategy. But because of that, I think you're going to see when you get into too much of a house and not enough money, you're going to end up losing that house, and you're going to see more short sales. So with short sales now, and you want to put some emphasis on it, you can simply go to different resources like ListSource or Listability, and you can pull data list of pre-foreclosures. And that's what really a short sale is. It's before it's went to an auction, right? You're still dealing with the owner of the property. And many people don't realize this, but when a bank forecloses on a property, the bank doesn't own the property. You do. You own that property all the way up to foreclosure. Whenever a property gets foreclosed on at the sheriff's sale, then a sheriff deed will be issued. And now that's no longer your property. You lost the property to foreclosure or with the sheriff's sale, but you own it all the way up to that process. So that little period right there is the time that you can do loan modifications and short sales. And basically you can deal with the owner of the property directly, and you can get a letter of authorization to be able to talk with the lender. They're going to give you a short sale packet. And all you need to do is start asking questions like, how many mortgages are on the property? If you have more than one mortgage on a property, find out what's the equity split. What is the amount of money that they owe? Did they do 70-30, a 90-10, an 80-10? Right? What did they do on what their position is for that second mortgage? Oh my gosh, a third mortgage. So if you could start focusing on those properties, you're going to find one eventually that has a big chunk of equity that they're in a potentially vulnerable position if the owner is missing payments, if they're behind on payments. And I don't know if it's still the case, but when I was doing short sales very frequently, usually list pendants wouldn't be filed until after 3 or more payments have been missed. Right. And the bank would file a list pendant, which then at that point could put you on the clock for the potential now to get you on the docket for foreclosures. Now, a lot of states are a year or 2 years even behind or more because it's backed up, right? So there's a lot of potential that you can find for strategies in dealing with these foreclosure properties or pre-foreclosure properties really in the short sale stage. And you should just be asking those questions. How many mortgages are on the property? What do you think that you could actually sell that property for if you were to get X amount of discount from it? And you can pull a lot of these lists from ListSource, Listability. Go in there, look for certain criteria. You can find out when mortgages have been refinanced. You can see if they've done what kind of, how much money essentially they've taken out on the property. You can look for certain lenders. Certain lenders are known to have a lot of short sales, so you could study and research that. There's a lot of things you could do. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it depends even what state you're in. If it's a non-judicial or judicial foreclosure, those judicial ones can get tied up, like you said, for years on end. Years. Those lenders are going to be more motivated not to get tied up in litigation for the next year to foreclose. They'd much rather just let's short sell this thing, get it off our books. We can go into this maybe another call, Kip. But I was actually in a situation where we got a property that the statute of limitations, it was in Florida, I think it was over 5 or 7 years, that we picked up a property with our good friend you and I know, Jason, and a few other folks, that we ended up, a homeowner association file had a judgment, a lien against this property. However, the mortgage company had went out of business. Wow. And we researched and found companies that went out of business, but there was still the first mortgage went out of business, but the homeowner association had money that was owed. So in that case, we went in and paid off. We essentially bought that mortgage or bought that lien from the homeowner association. And then we waited. We actually rented out the property. We got a lot of money that came in. And then when we went to go to get a quiet title, you have to have the mortgage company contest it. Well, they were out of business.
They're gone. Yeah.
So they're done. And so we ended up getting I want to say the property was over $200,000. And we ended up selling that property for well over $150,000. And we only had less than $20,000 in it. On top of this, Kent, we got cash flow that we didn't have to pay a mortgage company because no one knew who owned it, and that company went out of business. So anyway, there's all kinds of fun things
that's nuts.
Do. And creative, you gotta love creative real estate, man.
Oh my gosh. So jot that down as a side note. Look for mortgage companies that's gone out of business and go find those old assets. That's amazing, man. What a crazy strategy.
And homeowner associations, they're actually in front of a first mortgage. Again, this could go deep, man, but homeowner associations, when they file against the property, that's actually in front of, that takes seniority over a first mortgage.
I wonder if that's true in every state. Maybe it's state to state. I don't know.
Maybe it's state to state. Yeah. But in Florida, it was that case.
Yeah. Florida's a little bit backwards with their foreclosures and whatnot. Corey, this was super interesting, and maybe the only really good short sale best deal I've got. I mean, I love it. I mean, for those folks that are running against potential short sales or you're dealing with pre-foreclosures, it's a great strategy, man. I know there's not as many of them right now, but it still works. And give it a couple of years, folks. I think we're going to be right back in the middle of that again. So
I believe you're going to see short sales 2.0.
That's right. Corey, man, thanks so much for coming on the show. This was fantastic.
I appreciate you, Ken. Thank you, man.
Thanks, bud. Thanks for listening to the Best Deal Ever show, brought to you by Bigger Pockets. If you've been energized, entertained, or enlightened by today's show, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Ken Corsini, or check us out online at redbarnhomes.com. And don't forget, one man's best deal ever may be the inspiration you need to create your next best deal. So, hope to see you on the next episode.